Hey, how's it going? And today we're going to be working toward an understanding of what the Cast2 node does in Unreal. And the reason I wanted to do this video, quite frankly, is because I was struggling with the idea of what Cast2 is myself. So I'm just sharing you what I understand it to be. There's a lot of other videos out there explaining what they understand it to be. Obviously, there's some confusion about it because there's a lot of videos explaining what it is, but I'm just going to give you my take on what it is, and I hope you find it helpful. So I'm afraid this video is going to probably be a little bit longer than it normally is, just because I have a lot of stuff to go over. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example, and it will work through this example of showing a character collecting items, and then you'll see exactly how the Cast2 function works. And hopefully by seeing how it works and what it's for in this particular example, you'll get a better understanding of it yourself. First thing I wanted to talk about, though, was just this idea of casting, because it really is based on C++ and this idea of inheritance. It's confusing just because of the terminology. There's a lot of very specific terminology. If I could summarize it, if we look at this example here, it says here the dog class is derived from the animal class. Since the dog is derived from animal, members of animal are accessible to dog. And that's really what it is about. It's about one variable being able to access another variable. And usually these are blueprints within Unreal, that it's one blueprint trying to talk to another one. If you think of Cast2, if it wasn't defined as Cast2, if it was a different word, it might be convert to or transform something. If you think of what the word casting is, it's kind of, that word itself is confusing because that word means so many things. But if it wasn't called cast, it would really be called convert. So you're really converting and also checking something too. So that makes it confusing too. There's a lot of ways to get confused about it. But essentially, if we look at this example here, we've got a base class and a derived class. The main thing is that for Cast2 to work, the variables need to be a part of the same class. So if you have one variable and it's not a part of the same class, then the cast will fail. You can think of it as going from the generic to the specific. So what they mean by that is that all animals eat and sleep. So that's a very generic trait that animals have. But not all animals bark. So that's specific, right? So if we wanted this variable animal to be able to access this function within dog, we would go animal Cast2 dog. In other words, and as long as they're part of the same class, then we could access the dog variable through animal. So it's a way of moving from generic to the specific. The specific, and I get this is confusing when you think about inheritance, but the specific, which is the dog barking, inherits the features of the generic. So the inheritance is the dog variable, the derived class, inherits the eat and sleep features from the base class. Basically, you use it when you want a more generic variable to have more specific capability, but they must be a part of the same class. I guess that's the safest, most clear way to say it. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into Unreal, and we're going to go ahead and launch a third-person template game. And then we're just going to walk through the steps, and I'll try to explain as we go along what kind of is happening and why we're doing what. And this assumes that you know some basic terminology of Unreal. There's a lot of very specific terminology that can get confusing, very confusing. So we're going to just go to games. We're going to go to next, and we're going to go to the third person shooter here, which is right there, or just third person. And we're going to take everything in, and we're just going to call this casting, and go create project. And what I would recommend you do is just keep trying to do this tutorial over and over again until you get the basics down and understand it. And then it'll start making sense once you see what we're using casting for. So that we're using casting for one variable to get access to the features of another variable. So it's basically like a parent trying to get access to a child's hands or something. So you're the parent and that's your child. Then let's say you need your kid to reach in behind the couch. So you want to be able to access your child's little hand so they can reach in behind something, grab something. You as a parent don't have that capability. You would just use Unreal terminology. You'd say, I'm casting to my child. And as long as you guys are actually parent and child, then it would go through. If that wasn't your child, then they'd probably call CPS on you until you get away. All right, I've got a lot of notes on this. So here we go. And I'm sorry if this takes longer than my regular videos do. Well, let's just start with this. So we've got our basic project here, and this is our third person game. I guess it's important to explain one other thing too, is when we talk about a variable, when we talk about variables, variables are essentially placeholders. So basic variables can only store basic data like integers and floats and strings. And when you're working with complex data, where the data for an actor might be stored because an actor contains a whole bunch of data, when the variable points to a location in memory that holds all that data for the actor, that is what's called the object reference. So just keep that in your back of your mind. The term object reference means that it's a variable pointing to a location in memory saying there's where all the actor data is, right? So that's what an object reference is, because that terminology comes up quite a bit. Cast2, the Cast2 node, tries to convert a reference variable type to a new type of variable to gain access to more functionality in data. And that's hopefully what I hope to show you in this. And this is, of course, based on the idea of inheritance, which means that something can inherit things from something else, just like a child inherits qualities from its parent. But also at the same time that you're inheriting something, the parent is gaining access to the child. So that's where the Cast2 part is. The Cast2 part is basically saying, give me access. So in this, we're going to create a child blueprint of the game mode base. And I struggle with all this terminology in Unreal just like everybody else. Game base mode is what they call a parent class that defines the game being played, its rules, scoring, and other aspects of the game. Based on the concept of inheritance, we could use a variable from game mode base to reference an instance of a child blueprint. However, the variable we create will be enabled to access the functionality of the child blueprint. We can, by using the Cast2 node, establish communication with the child blueprint as long as they are members of the same class. So that sounds really confusing, but that's really what it is. If a connection is made, then the child will return a reference that we can use to access its functionality. It's sort of like asking, are you my child? And if they say yes, then you have access to your child. Like I said, they could reach behind the couch and grab something for you. So that's basically what the Cast2 is. It's kind of saying, are you my child? And then it's saying, yes, I am. And then it says, okay, I need you to reach behind the couch and grab this one. So we will start with this third-person shooter game. First thing we're going to go is into the add new here. We're going to make sure we're on the content browser. We're going to go to add new, and we're going to go to the blueprint class. And this is what I was talking to you about, the game mode base, and you can read what it is right here. Game mode base defines the game being played, its rules, scoring, blah, blah, blah. So then we go game mode. And now it's going to create this. So now what we're going to do is we're basically creating a child of that class. So this is a child within the parent class of game mode base. We'll just call this BP, and I'm just going to call it score child. Okay, just so we kind of have an idea of what it is. So you're with me so far? I hope we're creating from the parent class of game mode base, we're creating an instance kind of that, of a child of that. And this is now called BP score child. And this variable is going to contain features that are not in the game mode base. And then we'll cast to what we're creating here so that we can gain access to the variables that we're going to put inside of this right now. So I double click this, and that comes up, and we're going to create a variable. We're going to create a variable, and we're going to create a function. So when this window comes up, we get on this tab and we can just drag it and drop it up there on the top. And we do that. What we can do is we're going to create a variable named score. So we just come over here to variable, and we're just going to call it score, like that. And then over here, you can also name it over here. And this is going to be of the type of an integer type. So we come here and we can set the data type, and the data type is an integer. So we've created a variable called score. And then we're going to create a function called add score. So we click here on a function, and we can come over here and we can name it add score. And then you'll see the name change right there. For the function, we need to create what's called an input parameter, because functions have things that go in and go out. So we're going to click here and add a parameter. We can call this score to just score function. And this is going to be an integer type as well. Okay, so now we've created a variable, and we've created a function. And this will be used to add points to our total. So we're going to create a character that's going to be running through the scene, and he's going to be collecting a bunch of things. And then we have all this stuff going on here. So in the graph of the function, which is right here, this is the graph of the function, we're going to add a get and a set node. So we're in the function here, and we're just going to go ahead and come to our variable here and drag it onto the scene. See how you got get score and set score, just like that. And if we click get score, it just is right there. And now if we drag this again, we can choose set. So now this will be our set score. So we're going to drag off of this, and this is a function that's going to keep our running total. So we're going to come here and we're going to go to add. Should be able to find that here. Add, where is add component? Add int plus int. This is what we want, right? Add, there we go. And it's a plus sign, so we've got that. And then from here, we're going to hook up our game score to here. And then we're going to put this into here. And then we're going to put this into here. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to drag off here, and we're just going to print this out as a string. So we go print string. There it is right there. Print string. We don't have to have this say anything. Because these are two different data types, when we connect them, it'll automatically add a converter between them. And so that's basically our function right there. So this is a function that's going to keep a running total of our character as he collects items across the scene. So all we got to do here is just go compile and save. So our function. So now we're going to move over into what's called the level editor here. And if we go into the world settings, we need to choose the game mode override. We're going to come here and we want to put our BP score child as, so this will override our game mode right there. So we're going to come into the game mode and set it to BP, our child. Okay, now we're going to go create a blueprint. So we're going to come here to create a blueprint class, and we're going to select actor as the parent. And we're going to name this BP collector. And then we're going to open it in the blueprint editor. And then we're going to come to add component. This is just our items that we're creating. And we're going to look for static mesh right here. And in the details panel, let me make this a little bit bigger. We're going to go look for what's called SM statue. There's a statue, pre-built statue in here already, which is cool. SM statue. There it is. Your little funky statue. Under element 0, we can pick a nice metallic color here. So I think we want something like gold, right? Because statues are usually gold. Look, we got a nice little statue there our character can create. And also down here under collisions, we want to change this here. So collisions, overlap all dynamic. So that's going to be that. Now we're kind of on the home stretch here. We just got a little bit more to go, and we can compile this and save that. So that gives us a collectible item there. So now we're going to go into the event graph, which is right here. Then we're going to go into the event graph, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of this and get rid of that. And we're going to drag this over there like that. And this is where we start getting into the cast 2 functionality. So this is hopefully things will start making a little bit more sense at this level of the tutorial. Other actor is the instance that overlaps with the BP collectible blueprint. And so we're going to drag this pin out like this. So then we're going to choose cast 2 here, and we're going to go cast 2. And there's a ton of these, right? Third person character. What's interesting about this, so we're just using this to basically to test whether the instance referenced by the other actor, and this is really the generic right here, right? So this is the generic kind of going to the more specific right here, right? So this is a very global, another actor can basically be anything. So this is a very global variable casting to, converting to, accessing to a third person character. And we want to do this as a test. So if it passes, then the execution will continue. So this is just a test. This actually we're not really accessing any variables in here. We're just wanting to know if this cast goes through, then it confirms that the other actor is our player. Our third person, our player. And then we're going to right click here and get our game mode. So we get game mode So that we're asking this to get the game mode here. And this is the part that was really weird, difficult for me, because the get game mode returns a reference to the game mode used by the current level. But the type of return value is from the parent, the game mode base. And since it is from the parents, or a more generic type, it is not able to access the more specific blueprint score child that we created. And so it is unable to access the value of the score or the score function. So as a result, we have to use the cast2 to gain that access. So this is really what this is about, is we're taking this kind of global variable and we're wanting to gain access to the child that we've just created. Okay, so for this, there's a little bit involved here. So we're going to drag the blueprint pin out in order to get the context menu. And then we're going to go choose cast2 RBP store child, right? So this is exactly what we're doing. We're going from a generic to the specific. Like I just explained to you, returns a reference to the game mode used by the current level, but that type of return value is from the parent game mode base. So this is the generic functionality, and we're wanting a more specific functionality of the child we just created. And this child is a class of the game mode base, right? So that's why I say you got to kind of do this a few times just to get it all clear in your mind what's going on. And then we're going to drag out from here. And what are we looking for? We're looking for the functions that we just created. Where is our functions? That's our function, right? So that's the function that we just created. We add our function that we just created. I want to say that this has to drag into this right here. So once it passes the test, then we can proceed on to the main cast2 that we're trying to do, which is from the generic to the specific, right? So we just want to make sure that this confirms that our third person character is our game player, and this is a very generic. So this again is from the generic to the specific, from the generic to the specific, right? But in this case, it's just a test. It's not gaining access to really any functions there. And then we go to add score, and we've got to connect this to the target. Oh, as a BP child, right? And then we're going to drag off here and destroy our actors as we collect them. So as we collect our items, they will be destroyed. And then this completes our entire function here. I want to show you something before I proceed, and then we're pretty much done now. So let's go ahead and compile this. And good, I didn't get any errors. Oh, the one thing I did was I forgot to do was in my function here. One of these I have to put in add points. In here, add score, the score function, I can just put 50 in here, right? For my score function, add score function. Okay, and I think we're done. Now, the one thing I wanted to show you was, let's see if I go in here to component. Like we said, we can only cast to things that are in the same class. So these are in the same class. These are in the same class. So it accepts the casting to function because they're in the same class. And this is more generic and this is more specific. And when I cast to, it's allowing this to access this. When I cast to this, it's allowing this more global variable to access more specific functionality. So that's the basic cast to. And it gets more complicated than that, but basically that's what's going on. It's a parent accessing the child's functionality. And the parent-child in the sense of being in the same class, not that and that it's a two-way street. So this inherits the functionality of this, and this gains access to the functionality in this. But let's say if I come in here and let's say I drag a static mesh on here, right? And let's say I drag this into here and I try to compile it. You see, I get this error. Third person character does not inherit from static mesh component. In other words, these are not in the same class, so there's no inheritability here. This parent is not related to this child. So in other words, but when I put these two together, because they're in the same class, then they go through, right? Back to that first example of the base class and the derived class, right? So this is the base class and this is the derived class, right? And this, when we're casting to gain that functionality there. So let's see if this dang thing works. Let's jump into our game here, and I can supposedly drag these things here and just drop them on to the scene. And I have no idea if this is going to work or not. Like that. Let me go play. And so I'm just WASD. Let me see. Ka-ching, gone. And see the score over there? Okay, so now I come over here. I get more stuff. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-chong, ka-chong. And that's it. That's it. I hope I didn't waste too much of your time today, but this is a difficult kind of concept to get your mind around, but at the very least, you're able to create a collector, a collector item. So anyway, take care, have a great day, and I will talk to you next time.